What?
So I can line up the sound. So, okay, so then one other topic I kind of want to get to is fatherhood. And I'm interested to see your thoughts on how you were raised, how your parents kind of raised you, and the family dynamics a little bit, and then how that influenced you in kind of choices you made as a father.
All right, good question. My mother and father, my father came from an abusive home. His dad, and it's very interesting, because my grandfather on my father's side had a long history of abuses done to him. When he was 6 years old, he and his older brother, Tom was 2 years older than him, were sent from England to Canada in World War I to pick potatoes for the war effort. And just imagine that. You know, we haven't been able to find out why. Obviously, they were very poor, and your mother found out there were over 30,000 young boys sent from England at that time. And by the time my grandfather made it, he ran away, is the story, and he went to Portland and got a job with my grandmother's father, working for the railroad in Portland. And so through all of that, Grampy was a hard man, but a very loving man too. And he used to call me his good for nothing. Yeah, good for nothing, Georgie. You know, but I always interpreted that as love. And he motivated me a lot. So my father was a man, being British and from a British home, to not show affection. You know, we were not a hugging family.
Which is interesting you say that, because one of my fondest memories of Grampy as a kid, we'd get to their house in Scarborough, and he'd give the bear hug and pick us up. You know,
but he never
grandkids.
would hug me.
Right.
You know,
that's interesting.
Probably because he had learned by then that grandfathers are supposed to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And your grandfather was a very intellectual man. You know, and Mom, my mother, grew up in a very large French home where she had 6 brothers and 5 sisters. You know, one of the sisters died. There were 12, and then it became 11. My mother was very affectionate and very loving. And so my mother basically raised us, where my father was always off with business, and he was very active in politics, and you know, so he was going to the state house all the time as a state senator. You know, so my father's role, my mother's favorite argument was when I wasn't acting out according to what she thought was the right way. I was a good kid. I didn't get into trouble and things like that. But she would say, when your father gets home, you'll get a licking.
Right.
So I always subconsciously feared when Dad would come home, because Jerry and I would be in trouble. It was always Jerry and I. So that influence on me was when Ann and your mother and I became parents. We had done a lot of talking about it. And I told her I was not going to be the disciplinarian. And I realized I might have taken that too far, because she became the disciplinarian. Would you agree with that?
I feel like you guys had a decent balance.
Well, we tried to, but you see, your family issues dominate. You might say, I'm going to try to get out of it, but, you know, like, I would be the first to let you off your punishment.
Right.
You know, because I wanted to love you, but your mother kept saying to me, but by loving them, you also have to discipline. And
Right.
she's right,
Right.
you know. So I guess we did have a good balance, but it was hard.
So like you said, there was a you were definitely the softer. Discipline wise, if there was a spanking or if we really deserved it, you were the more disciplined one. But following through, that was more mom.
Right.
For sure.
And that's why, because I always remembered fearing my father, and I didn't want you kids to fear me.
Right. No, and there was definitely none of that.
Yeah.
But I think I think that balance, I think the two of you struck a good balance there. Because there are times where it's like you need to be grounded for a week. And then there's time for compassion too. You know,
And it didn't work with Sam.
it's interesting how different we all are and how we
Yeah.
respond to different stimuli and yeah. And you've said to me a couple times, and I know Grampy Pelletier said this to Mom, that you don't feel that you were a good father, which I mean everybody I run into, love your dad. How's your dad doing? I mean, from childhood, you know, you were one of the favorites of all my friends' parents. What do you think that? Where do you think that you have regrets, I guess, or what you would do differently?
It probably has more to do with Sam. I feel I failed Sam somehow. And I don't know why. Sam's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Josh and I are more easy to read.
Sam's impossible to read. I mean, one day we're playing cards, and we were Jackie and David. And no, we were playing cribbage. And I made a mistake. The way our cribbage board goes, it goes this way and then comes back. And so if you're on this side and the pegs are in the middle over here, your tendency is to forget the color and I had moved him. And he just came down on me and I just said, and walked out.
Right.
You know, I've never had to do that before with anybody in my life.
Right.
You know, you just get tired of his. I don't know what it is. He just.
Yeah, if there's one thing I would love to relay to Sam, life's too short to be upset about small
Nothing.
things. Right. And I get that there's frustration and other things have happened and
Yeah. So. Why I feel I wasn't a good father, I guess that's a normal thing. You know, I guess it's because I felt I wasn't there enough with you.
That was the only thing I could guess that you thought.
Yeah, you know, because my job was in the way I approached my job. It's like it had to come first.
Right.
And I put my family second, and that bothers me.
But I don't think I felt that at all.
Okay.
Because coming home from school, you were there. Where the church was right next door, you were always there. You know, we always had our dinners together. And we
Yeah, that's true.
there wasn't a lot of dad's gone for instance, and it's interesting because Jarrett, his father was a merchant marine, a path that you easily, if you found a job out of school, maybe you don't go down the path
I would have
went
been
down.
gone. Oh, absolutely.
And maybe you stay on that path and it never
Yeah,
goes
and
where it
I
did.
was a good engineer.
Right.
I remember Pete Connors and I, when we did our internship for 6 months, we were called before the assembly and awarded for outstanding cadet shipping.
Right.
And what we did is the third engineer was drunk at 3 in the morning, and we're going up the Mississippi, which is a very dangerous place. And he's drunk, and the boilers, 2 of the tubes blew up in the boiler. Now, what happens is if you don't shut that engine down quickly, you can lose your ship. And both of us, cadet shipping, and we knew exactly what to do. I remember Pete's running this way, and I'm running this way, and I'm closing down these valves, and he's closing it, and we saved the ship and got commended for it. So I was a good engineer. I knew what I was doing. I understood. Don't remember a thing about it now.
Right. Yeah.
But
I think of Jarrett growing up with his dad Mike, who's a very loving. And,
oh yeah.
But he was gone 3 months,
3 months,
6 months, whatever. And I know how hard that was on Jarrett to grow up like that. To Libby, right? The family, and it'd be great to have 6 months of just your dad, but you're in school, you're doing your things. Yeah. So I mean, in comparison, there,
yeah,
you were always there. So I don't. Yeah, I don't feel like anything was missing in my childhood, and I feel like I've learned a lot as a parent. As my role model, I think I've done pretty well using your guidance.
And you've done well with Kaylin and Logan.
Yeah, and we all
and Jeff and Melissa.
There's no book to this stuff.
No, there isn't, and that's the hard part because you literally have to go through it.
Right.
But I give a lot of the credit to your mother, who forced me to sit down and talk about how we were going to parent. See, I would have let it just happen, and your mother is very capable that way. She has a big need to do things right.
What kind of things would you talk about? Like what kind of decisions?
How do we punish? To not punish out of anger.
Right.
And that was pretty easy with you and Josh, but with Sam it was very hard.
We must have been a handful, but my girls are so, I think more because they're girls. Or younger girls are looking to please, and we were wild boys.
I would use the word active.
Right.
And I knew both of you had good friends. Even though sometimes we were concerned about Chris because of his home environment, but we knew basically he was a good kid. Stevens.
Oh, right. And it's right.
And John was a good kid.
I remember, and this was in high school, John Wibby, who was a friend of mine, I grew up kind of doing all right. His family came to the Stillwater Church at some point, and his mother was pretty, embarrassed at how his kids were acting up. And somebody in the church said, "Don't worry, they're not as bad as the Curtis boys."
But you weren't bad. Bad is stealing and abusing other people, and kids need to be kids.
Yeah, I was probably a little rough on Jaw. I know I was, as a big brother. I wish I was more aware of what bullying was, and and kind of a little easier on him. He was my Jerry,